I'm going live now. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're
Hello?
audible. I think we can go live.
We are live, sir.
We are live, sir. We are live.
Okay.
All the best, everybody.
Hi, all of you. Good evening. I hope you can all see us. Am I streaming fine, all of you? Akshay, Karan. Good evening. Nadia, Mary, good evening. Good evening. Nice to see you back again. It tells us that we might be doing some things right for you to coming back to us. Karan, hi, good evening. Akshay, I'm good. Okay. Ashwini. So can you all confirm, yesterday we had some glitches in the initial audio. Then, of course, we rectified. I hope I'm streaming fine, all of you. Yeah? Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. So, okay, then let's get started. Today, 15th of September, the first, 16th, the first GS paper 1, which includes geography, it includes history, and parts of social issues of India. So we'll have a quick analysis and we'll discuss certain questions, not all the questions, because 20 questions, and the purpose is not to tell you all the answers, but a discussion on what type of questions, what can the answers be. Okay, so it'll be a good experience for all of us. Thank you all for joining in. First, let me welcome all the panelists here. With us, we have Satyam Chaudhary, we have Uttam with us, and we have Devender with us. And the three have been part of Edukemy team, integral to our team. Satyam Chaudhary is a bureaucrat. He's in civil services. He is an IRS officer in revenue, IT service. Thank you so much, Satyam, for joining us. It's a privilege to always have you back. In many ways, Satyam has been one of the founding members of Edukemy way back when we started in 2019-20. So Satyam is pretty confident about the type of questions asked and that it will be scoring paper. That's what he feels. We have with us Devender. Devender has been handling our current affairs, discussions of a test series. He has been part of our MSP program and PSP program, and he has specialization in economy also. So thank you, Devender, for joining us. And we have Uttam. Uttam kind of leads our academics in terms of the content quality, the review, how we frame our questions. It's been part of the test series overall management. And he looks into all aspects of quality enrichment in our GS content. So thank you, Uttam. You too, welcome. So my quick analysis in a few words, and then I'll let on the team handle this. So my analysis is, I think the paper was definitely not as tricky as it was last year. The same applies for essays also. Essays paper, of course, was last year was very, very tough. The questions are not understandable. This year the questions are understandable. And the same pattern more or less has been in GS paper 1 also. And more or less the same distribution. 5, 6 questions, 7 questions in geography. We have questions from modern India, questions from colonial India, questions from history. Plus, we have social issues. Women issues is a standard given almost. They ask every year. We have questions related to family, questions related to caste and identity, ethnic issues. So in terms of the spread of the question, it is same. Not much has changed. But there's some other changes that you have to notice. So Devinder, you can take off now. A quick analysis of what do you think about the paper?
So let me show the analysis of the paper. In my view, if we are, as per our institution, if we are dividing the question according to levels, the level 1 question, level 2 question, the level 3 questions. So I categorize and compare the 2023 paper with 2022. If we see the slides here, so if we see the slides, hello.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Yes. So if we see the year 2023, there are L3 questions are 6, where in the 2022, these are the 4 questions. Means the UPSC is moving toward the harder side. Similarly, in the case of L2 question, initially in 2022, there were the 8 questions, and now there are the 9 questions. And if we see the level of L1, The L1 question in 2022 was 8, but now they decreased to 5. Means the UPSC is changing its pattern and they're moving toward the analytical questions, not the direct question from the book itself. So we need to be cautious about the current affair integration. We need to be cautious about the type of the question UPSC is asking here. If we see,
just to clarify for all of you viewers, we categorize our question 3 levels. L1 questions are straight questions, more factual. Most of us have in our notes. L3 questions are the deeper questions, understanding based, where questions demand lot of linkages across topics. L3 questions require more expansive reading and, more importantly, critical thinking. It's difficult to anticipate L3 every time. So out of 20 questions, 75%, almost 3/4, 15 of them are L3 level questions. There is a perceptible shift in terms of difficulty level and the demands of the question. Yeah, please, Devendra, sorry, continue,
okay,
please.
yes. If we are going subject wise, if we are dividing the L3 question subject wise, then the geography include the 2 questions, society 3 question, and the history 1 question. If we see the trend, it increased from the last year 2022, where the single question from the geography, 2 question from the society, and the 1 question from the history was there. And if we see the mark distribution this year, we can see the modern history contribute the 35 marks and the number of question was 3. Art and culture, the 40 marks and the number of question is 3. Society is 75 marks. Always there are the 6 questions on the society, and the geography is the huge share here. It's 100 marks and the 8 question we can see in the paper. But there is some change in the paper, like the shifting from the traditional question, the introduction of some old question that was UPSC going to be asked in the 2013, 2014, and also the linkage with economy, environment, and disaster management. So let's see one by one. If we see the traditional theme question, so we identify the 3 questions here. The first is the difference between the Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore. Initially, there was a question related to the Mahatma Gandhi and the B.R. Ambedkar. And on the same line, they asked this question, the Mahatma Gandhi and the Rabindranath Tagore. Then again, the water crisis, the fresh water resources. Every year, the UPSC is asking question related to the water crisis, water resources. And again, the colonial effects and the tribal revolts. These are the favorite area from where the UPSC is asking question. Even 1 year after the 2 years, they are repeating these kind of the themes. But
have the traditional questions decreased, Devendra,
yes,
or remain same?
Traditional question decreased. Like initially there were 6, 7 question we can say they are repeating from the PYQ, but now in this year there was only the 3 questions they are repeating on those themes. They introduced the new themes and they are reintroducing the theme.
I was expecting a question on water issues, and it's always there. Water problems, water pollution, water shortages, problems of droughts or floods. It's always there. Colonial and tribal issues. So fine. The traditional themes are there, but less.
If we see the change in themes where they introduce the new themes, if we see the introduction of railway in different country, that they're asking from the historical perspective. So there's a new theme introduced by the UPSC. Again, we are seeing the regional integration, like the Purvaiya in South and Western Monsoon, linking with the cultural ethos. Now they're linking the geography, history, and the society together. And the young woman suicide rate means there's a narrow dimension in this question, but we will write in 150 words. So there's a change in the themes we can see in the paper easily. There's a new introduction of new themes by the UPSC. If we talk about the young woman suicide, in 2020, they asked about the work from home, but that was a broad perspective. Now they decrease the perspective to a narrow one in the young woman suicide rate.
So women issues are always a possible question. Last time we had, in fact, this time I think we have 2-3 questions around women and family, right? One of us was suicide rates, one around the upbringing of children, so women issues, social issues. Okay, good, nice, excellent.
But one thing changed here in a society, they are completely moving toward the current affairs. Initially, they are just asking some question from the bookish knowledge, but now we need to read the newspaper continuously to integrate our current affair knowledge with the basic part. So only we can answer these questions if we are reading the continuous current affairs with our regular.
So generic questions are not being asked, if that's what you mean.
Yes,
generic questions like what are the problems of women, generic questions like what is poverty and its impact on issues of poverty, generic questions like let's talk about inequality. Even now become very specific. Women and suicides. Women work from home. Social issues related to economic reforms and ethnic identity. So the linking social themes Okay, with current affair based discussions, if that's what you mean,
Yes, sir.
Devendra.
Yes, sir. Yes. If we see the like a UPSC repeating after 2012-13, they're reintroducing themes like initially they ask about the landforms, but the new kind they introduced in this paper in 2023. Initially, they were used to ask this kind of the question in 2013, 2014, but after 6, 7, 8 years, they introduced the landforms and the Vedic society questions. In 2017 to 2023, there was no question on Vedic society, but this time they again asked the question on the Vedic society here. And
The shift
lastly,
is from Buddhism, Jainism,
the-
art-related topics. They've asked quite a bit on
yes.
art issues in temple architecture, sculpture. This time they are moved towards Vedic. So
Yes, sir.
thematic change. I'm not very sure if
Thematic
that's
change.
here to stay or not. Okay, but
Yes.
culture, but on different themes. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So that's
If we see the
analysis.
linkage with the GS3, mostly with the GS3, even it's like the environment, is the disaster management or the economy. If we see the question related to the coastline and the natural hazard preparedness, there's a linkage with the disaster management. If we know the first part, but we need to link the second part with the DM of the GS paper 3. So the
Wow.
linkage become very important here. Initially, like from the GS1, we are writing from the 3 perspective, but now they are introducing the more dimension here. Similarly, with the
In fact,
diversity
I
of
have always wondered why have they kept environment topics in paper 3, and why did he keep geography in
geography
paper
in the
1?
paper 1.
Okay.
But now they're
Although
linking all
paper
them.
3 is around development issues, security, maybe from security concerns they are put there along with science and technology, maybe. But now
Yes.
we can see that geography has a very strong link with environment. You cannot ignore environment, okay, and talk about geography and vice versa. So one question to you, Satyam, on this. What is your take on this? What type of preparation does this need? Maybe 2 words on this, Satyam, if I can ask you, please.
Sir, I think it requires it requires understanding the basics most. So many a times we are more indulgent into reading more content rather than focusing on how we actually understand something. There are many examples of this sort throughout the paper, like why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society. I don't think there is any book that will prescribe you the reasons for this, or any article even that you can read up and understand the reasons directly. Similarly, question like child cuddling is now becoming replaced by mobile phones. This is something that is literally happening in front of our eyes. Nobody can tell us or talk about these things. Again, there are many questions. It's just spread out there. Like, does urbanization lead to more segregation or marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolis?
Yeah.
Again, not something that's standard. So most of the answers, there are many questions that can be done with application of mind if one has clear understanding of the basics. But then
I agree.
when I say clear understanding, I'm saying the word basic, so people may take it lightly. But when I say clear understanding, it's something a bit a notch up. It's about understanding things and issues more clearly than not just superficially, but actually understanding what's going on in there. So that's what I would mean. And when you
Yeah, I
say
agree. I agree, Satyam. Yeah. Go on.
similarly, sir, when you have given focus on linkages can only be created when one has understanding of those basics. You understand the fundamentals of 2 different topics, so you can connect better, understand the linkages better only then.
So I agree. The question require a lot of quick understanding of the topics in the context of what's happening around us. Merely by hearting, I mean, it's impossible to anticipate questions like cuddling of children and the impact. It's almost impossible to anticipate. They are so specific, which will be something along the lines of women's suicides and young women's suicides in India. Like suicide in general, we can write down. So I think this linkage part is a very powerful development in this paper. I can see this happening in the other papers also. Okay, I think the analysis part is good enough, more or less. So should we get into the question discussion now one by one? Okay, or you have something else in mind? Devendra, can you please use the slide mode if possible so that you can
Yes,
have
sir.
the complete screen show? Can you use the slideshow?
Yes, sir.
From, yeah. We can start off thereafter. It's not showing still, but okay, fine. Let's start off. Let's start off. Okay, so are you done with the analysis? We can go one by one then. Are we done with the analysis of the paper now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So all our viewers, we'll start off a quick discussion on the questions. The first question is, explain the role of geographical factors towards development of ancient India. Now, this we believe is a level 2 question, not something which is tough to handle. Satyam, can you give us a quick reference in maybe in 1 or 2 minutes? What do you think can the answer to this particular question be? Explain the role of geographical factors towards development of ancient India. Just the pointers, please.
Sir, when we study the ancient history, we see the development through time, but everywhere there have been geographical factors that have influenced this development. For example, first we see Indus Valley civilization. The very Indus Valley civilization derives the name from Indus River itself, which was the most paramount factor for the development of that civilization. Also, we can see the trade, the shells, everything associated with it, all that depended upon the river itself. Eventually, it started, all the civilizations and cultures started moving eastward. Nobody is sure about why Indus Valley civilization disappeared, but again, there are theories like earthquake, which led to Yamuna River, pirating the Saraswati River, and hence the reduction of water there. That is also geographical factor, right? Then we start moving eastward. We see eventually, the first landed, civilizations appearing when Janpad appeared. Before that, there was just Jana. Jana means just people. Janpad is where the land of the people belongs, right? So Janpad also appears again because of geographical factor. We have iron coming up, because of which access could be prepared. Access could be used to cut down trees. Those trees, and then agriculture could take place. Agriculture again supported, surplus agriculture, I would rather say, freed many other people to work in something else. So work as part of army, work in other art and craft, work even as merchants, traders, whatever. So it's surplus agriculture that enables the growth of civilization. That is why many janpads could become very big, very large. Again, sir, we see a clear picture wherein in MP and in Bihar, we have Magad in Bihar, we have Avanti there. Both of them had access to iron mines, iron ore mines. So they could, create more, utilize that iron more. So they became the principal centers of power and had conflicts also. Again, Magad eventually became the biggest power because it had the advantage of river. It had the advantage of elephants that were found in the jungles of that area. It had the advantage of rivers in both senses. One in terms of navigation and other in terms of protection.
Yes. So if I sum up this one quickly, a river was a geographical factor for entire northern plains and Harappa. Then the presence of forests, and the development of agriculture in the regions of eastern, northern plains, Bihar, that impacted the elephants there. The reference of mines, iron ore mines, and the development there. And even the geographical, in fact, the spread of Vedic was also in northern plains, maybe because Vindhyas probably bordering south didn't allow for the expansion towards south as conveniently.
Definitely,
maybe.
sir. Sir, Vindhyas actually became hindrance between, exchange of north and south. Similarly, sir, if we see, even after this Magad, when Kanishka came and Kushans came, they could come only from a pass, right? So we have first international empire under Kushan, in which India is also a part, and that extends towards Afghanistan and everything. But it could only happen from a certain location, right? Khyber Pass. It's not something like they couldn't have just crossed the Himalayas. So the cultural influence of Greco-Romans and all those cultural influences again come from, very directed region, which is geography. Then we have our coastline, Arab merchants start coming. So they have their own cultural influence. And we see in Kerala.
But I think the trick here will be that we must limit it to ancient India. Maybe we can talk about Cholas of southern India and the ports, and the Kaveri basin being a fertile basin, and the rise of the Cholas there. I'm thinking aloud, yeah, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Even Cholas as empire, the only a true empire in India, what we call, because they had ambitions even beyond India.
Yes,
so
yes.
All those factors. Sir, one thing I would like to point out here is one approach about seeing the question. So I was discussing with Uttam. Uttam, if you could come in here, how we were discussing about this, that when we see this question, one way of thinking is thinking of geographical factors first. What are the geographical factors? Now that usually confuses you, because when you start thinking of geographical factors, you think of deserts, you think of mountains, you think of rivers, and then you think how it's shaped. Instead, if you start thinking how development in ancient India took place, and then you just find what were the geographical factors that were directing these, right, Uttam?
Yes.
So we had another example. So say, explain the role of technology, in agricultural development, right? So one can start thinking about technology. Now, technology is a lot of things. Technology is computer, technology is even fan, technology is everything. So starting from technology becomes difficult. But the other keyword is agricultural development. So you take seeds, how it has helped seeds. You take
start from the historical element, historical event, historical say maybe location, and then bring it back to geography.
Yes,
rather than geography towards history, you move easier to analyze.
It's easier to analyze. It's quicker to answer in such a manner,
okay,
rather than taking it from
excellent,
that side.
Excellent. So I think question number 1, that's our input there. Question number 2, the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Ravindra Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism. I would rate this as an L1 question. Uttam, do you agree it's an L1 question or L2 question? Not L3, definitely.
Yes, sir. It's an L1 question, basically.
Yeah.
And the basic content would be, the basic approach would be the static content, right? So Mahatma Gandhi focused upon Nai Talim education, and Tagore focused on Shanti Niketan form of education.
Yes. So I think this is a straight question. We don't need to discuss much on this. I'll directly go towards the third question. Bring out the socioeconomic effects of introduction of railways in different countries of the world. So 3 things stand out in this question, all of you viewers. One is that we have to talk about socio-economic effect, whereas we'll not talk about the political power, political expansion, political domination, all this linked, of course. That's one thing. The second is it's about introduction of railways. We have to go back in past in time. This is a question more from history, less from geography, though they're related. And third is give example from different countries. So I think if you have done some bit of basic study from NCERTs, this should have been at least manageable. I'm not saying that a brilliant answer, manageable. So I took up 5 examples of history from countries. One is, of course, India. We can't leave that out. And the first Thane, Mumbai, Bombay line railways, the ports that we had, and how it was drain of wealth, poverty of India, the growth of export from India. India becomes supplier.
Yeah.
So, and all of that, you can handle that one. The second, I think Africa, not many of us know, there's a train line called as Tanzara Railway. Tanzara, short form of Tanzania and Zaire. This linked Tanzanian coast, Dar es Salaam port, with the parts of Zaire in Congo, DRC, and also the Zaire, Congo itself. The Congo region has very important mines, particularly mines of copper, manganese mines. That is an area of a plateau called as Katanga Plateau. Katanga Plateau is a very rich resource region of Africa, important for cobalt, for copper, for manganese, not iron, of course. And we have these mining centers called as Lubumbashi, Elizabethville, parts of Congo. So this was something like drain of wealth for Africa itself. So railways there, again, exploitation, poverty, population got ultimately involved in the mine economy. And that continues to be part of the story of Congo even now. That's a second example. A third example, a very good one of the early railways we have in the world was also the Trans-Siberian Railway. It goes back to the mid and late 19th century. 1800 onwards, we have the Siberian Railway. Now, the impact of Siberian Railway was different from the impact of the railways in the developing countries. In case of Russia, it helped unify the grain producing regions of the steppes. It was done by the Tsars of Russia, the Romanov dynasty. They unified Russia, the grain production. It linked Eastern Russia with the Western Russia. It was a part of political consolidation. Linked to this was some element of exploitation of the farmers there. In fact, the culmination of these railways and exploitation by the kings and the economic system is what ultimately led to the Russian Revolution that we had in 1917. So that was Russia. The third example we can talk about is the impact in Australia. Australia has a trans-Australian railway starting from Perth in the southwest to eastern side in Sydney. It links the gold mines in between. If you have heard about some of the gold mines of Australia and iron ore mines of Australia, the same linkage, the drain of wealth type, where the desert parts impacted and the resources were taken towards eastern, and the impact was on local indigenous population. The impact on Australian aborigines, they got displaced, exploitation there, and all of that. The fifth example I can take up is the impact of railways in Canada. So what railways did for Russia in terms of economic integration is what happened even for Canada. Canada, it was integration of the prairies of Canada, starting from Vancouver in the west, Regina in the west. Eastern side, we have ports of St. John's, and it was a Trans-Canadian Railway that actually helped prosperity of Canada. Even now, Canada is one of the large exporters of grain, wheat. And this railway, it was linked to the Northern Atlantic Ocean trade to UK, linked to the trade in the US also. And another example of colonial, so Russian and Canadian examples are the examples of political consolidation, economic prosperity to some extent, whereas the stories of Australia, India, Africa, and South America is more of exploitation. In South America, near Santiago, there's a pass called as Uspallata Pass. Uspallata Pass near Santiago, Chile is very important for the copper production. Chile has historically been very important for copper. So the railways there, again, were part of exploitation of Chile's copper mines. So we have poverty, development, exploitation, the rise of the colonial Western nations, all part of because railways. And railways are symbolic of exploitation. Of course, you can always mention something about Europe, but European railways impact was very different from what we have in the rest of the world. So I think that takes care of question number 3. The next question we will take up is question number 4. Discuss the consequences of climate change on food security in tropical countries. Uttam, can I request you take off please on this?
Yes,
Discuss
sir.
the consequences of climate change on food security in tropical countries. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this question contains, actually the main keyword is food security in tropical countries. Discuss the consequences of climate change on the food security in tropical countries, right? So most aspirants would basically go wrong in talking about food security, right? So they would basically not write what is availability, accessibility, and assimilation and stability of food, which is the component of food security. I and Satyam were discussing about this component of food security, right? So majorly students would not write this. And second thing, they would limit the food security, the food component, to food grains only. They would not realize, or they would make mistake. I think the Satyam and Devendra would agree that they would make mistake. They would only focus on food grains rather than go for allied things like fisheries,
Yes.
apiculture, and
Fishery,
livestock.
horticulture, apiculture, you need to include it.
Livestock, right? So when we discuss this question, so what the question asks is discuss the consequences of climate change. So what would be the consequences? First is temperature rise, right? So what will it do? So when the temperature will rise, there will be decline in agricultural yield. Right? So according to IMF, there is for 1 degree rise, there would be around 1.7% decline in agricultural growth, right? And there will be 20%, 20 to 25% basically farm income losses, especially in tropics, right? And it will create a vicious cycle of low production and low income. Then it will majorly go to low production. Secondly,
if we are going to the fishing sector, the same effect of temperature we can see. If
Yes,
rising
yes.
the temperature of the ocean, that will lead to the migration of the fishes and the death of the fishes also. That we can also add here.
Yes, sir. And there will be decline in fish catch also.
Yes.
Second point we can write is the crop damages due to extreme weather events. Like for example, recently, due to Western disturbances, impact of Western disturbances, there was a crop damage of tomatoes, right? So what it did, that it increased the prices of tomato. There was tomato inflation, right? And the third point we can write about the desertification, right? So the expansion of deserts and the land degradation. So we can see that in the Sahel region, where it would expand.
One of my inputs, like you mentioned it, Uttam, that
Yes,
most
sir.
people will see climate change in terms of floods and droughts and stop. Floods and
Yes,
drought
sir.
losses and stop. They will not relate the climate change to, like you said, desertification. They will not relate the problems to problems related to climatic refugees. They probably
Yes,
will
sir.
not relate to the problems of the pests attack. You're talking about locust, I remember you discussing.
Yes, sir.
And somewhere, I think the climate change also creates climate-based conflicts also. Like a lot of conflicts of Sudan, Somalia linked to climate change. And that conflict also indirectly will impact. What I'm saying this is, if you look at the chat, hi Abhinash, I can hear you and I can see, I see your comment here. So Abhinash typically writes, okay, South Sudan, Chad, Somalia, floods, droughts, cyclones, droughts, floods, Pakistan, floods, Sahel, wildfires. That's all. So you cannot think beyond floods and droughts. So the problem of food security, floods and droughts, obvious. That's one problem. Second problem is most students will not know to name the specific crops. So what Uttam is doing is talking about tomato. Okay, what Devendra talks about fishes. Similarly, we can talk about decline of food grains. When there are, and you forget climate change and droughts, and it's not simply production loss. It's also about the exporting countries will stop exporting their grain. I think Australia stopped exporting their grain, and that impacted the food in other countries. So this
Sir,
is not as, yeah, sorry, go on, please.
one thing we can add here, the climate change induced hunger. That is also the major part of it. There is data like 65 million people at risk in the world and the 17 million people in India. So that data we can also use here.
Yes, yes, I interjected. Uttam, continue, please. I just thought I'll put
Yes,
in
sir.
my words also. Yeah,
Sir,
Yes,
continue.
sir. I will add.
So just like Uttam said, talked about, even components of food security. So most of the points that, these extreme events or they address availability primarily. But the other components like accessibility. Accessibility itself is hampered because of at times extreme events, at times other things, right? We have more
Yes.
wastages because of rising temperature, leading to hidden hunger. Similarly, sir, rising temperature makes the most vulnerable communities even more vulnerable, who are actually exposed. So we are specifically talking about tropical countries here, as asked in the question. So the temperatures are already high. The assimilation component, wherein whatever we consume is assimilated better in our bodies, that component is also impacted due to climate change. So all these factors, actually, all four components are affected by
So
climate change.
we're trying to emphasize on your viewers and listeners is, don't write the answer from the perspective of, I know the points, I'll write it down. You must subconsciously also remember that your answers have to be somewhat strikingly very analytical. Okay, the answer simply is not filling up the pages. I have content in one page. Think about how to make, and you can't do this for every question, but wherever you can do this, add this. Some interesting insight, some interesting dimension, okay, some thing that tells us you have studied the problem a bit more deeply. So like this angle of climate change and increase in tropical diseases. There's a clear-cut relationship between increase of temperature, chikungunya, Nipah virus, pandemic itself for that matter, increase of temperature, wildfires, how that impacts problems like tuberculosis maybe in some of the countries. We have got Ebola virus, SARS as a problem. MERS, Middle East, that's a problem. So ये interesting dimension है कि climate change से health issues हैं, climate change से water issue हैं, and that impacts assimilation component, that impacts health components. So brilliant, Uttam and Satyam, excellent.
So one
So
point
anything else you
I
want
would
to
like
add?
to
Yes.
add. Yes,
Please.
sir. So basically, most of the students know, or they would have studied in prelims. For example, the country collapse disorder part, right? We have studied in environment part, when there is basically collapse of bees due to climate change, right? So we can add that knowledge into this Mains answer. We know that, but we do not know how to use that part. We need to appreciate that.
In fact, end the answer towards the importance of 30-30 by 2030 initiative, end the answer towards land degradation neutrality, end the answer towards Mains program of the world to drive the hunger issue, to take care of hunger issues using Shri Anna or millets.
Yes, sir. I also add SDG 2.
SDG 2 and the woman angle can also be like the 40% of the female are working in the agriculture field.
Agreed. Excellent. So fine, I think we'll move on from here. Question number 4 is done. Question number 5, I am skipping because it's a very straight question. Water issues, water accessibility, availability. I think all of us understand this. River problem, rainfall issues, problems related groundwater exhaustion, over irrigation, problems related to pollution also. Giving an example is a straight question. I think all of us should be aware of this question. I'm skipping question number 5. I'm going question number 6. So question number 6 is what I was waiting for because that is my domain. That's the geography, landforms. And I'm sure none of you have entirely not heard about this, but maybe none of us have studied this in detail. What are fjords? FJORD, what are fjords? It's a very basic landform study in NCRTs, in the Goching Leong. We don't study it, but it's there. So quickly, fjords essentially are submerged valley mouth of glaciers. So when there are rivers and there are submerged coasts can create 3 type of landscape. They can create ria coasts, which are submerged river valley. They can create fjords, which are submerged glacial valleys, and they can create Dalmatian coasts, which are submerged parallel ranges parallel to the coast. If you open up Goching Leong, you'll get what fjords are. And how fjords are formed are basically one, tectonic reasons where the land may subside. The second reason is sea level rise, geostatic changes. The sea level rise is a more common example, particularly most fjords of the high latitudes in parts of Iceland. Norway is known as land of fjords. The coasts of Britain, Scotland has a lot of fjords. The coast of Canada has fjords. The fjords here are the consequence of sea level rise associated with post-glaciation, post-Pleistocene ice age, melting of waters. So how are they formed? How do they form the most picturesque area of the world? If you ask me, UPSC ने आपको यहाँ पर छेड़ दिया. ये होते हैं ना तंग करने के लिए बीच में छेड़ देते हैं. You end up troubling somebody. That's what UPSC doing here. Nobody would have anticipated, and you can't study this. It's impossible. You go back and read about this. Use the brains here. Why is now the problem for some of us could be we do not know the meaning of picturesque. Essentially, something beautiful to look at, something which is grand to as a part of nature's beauty. It's beautiful. Why is beautiful? I can see 4 reasons. And I'm entirely from my thinking. One is they're unique landforms. Glacier landforms हर जगह होते नहीं हैं. When we say glaciers, most of us imagine mountain tops. These are glaciated, submerged glacial mouths. That's why they're unique, not found elsewhere, and that's what makes them beautiful. One. Number 2, these areas have a typical unity of mountain, glaciers, ice, along with coast and the sea. It's a deadly combination. You can see 3-4 types of range of the landform collection from the mountains, the glaciers, the snow, okay, and you to move towards the sea. That's second. Third reason is these sheltered waters, so not big waves. So they're kind of very beautiful, peaceful lagoon type of formations are formed here. We call the lagoons formed here as sounds. They're shallow water, so that makes it beautiful. Plus, of course, the greenery, whatever we have in the summer months, that adds the beauty there. So essentially, they're very, very picture-worthy landscapes because of their diversity, because of the serenity, because of their they being virgin and not as exploited. That's what makes them so nice and interesting features to see. One question, if you can all answer, and I'll ask this also. So what do you think? Are fjords good locations for ports? Are fjords good locations for ports? Ports. Anybody from the viewers, if you can tell us? Anybody from the viewers can tell us? Are they good locations for ports? Okay. What I mean, to think about what does port require? Port requires shallow waters. Ports require sheltered waters. Port require some kind of easy accessibility. Ports are good if they are near developing countries or developed nations. So what do you think? Are they good? Anybody from our panel, can you answer? Maybe Devender or Uttam. So answer is yes, Savan. Yes. Harish says yes. Okay, Divek says no. That's a resounding no, he says. Warm currents are there. So yes, Vipul says no. Okay, the answer from my side is no. No, because for having good ports, it is not enough to have sheltered waters alone. For good ports, we also need very good hinterland. The area must be connected with railways and roads, with industrial centers, with mining centers and agriculture centers. Merely having sheltered water not enough. So this is a statement in the NCERTs, but not explained. Essentially, fjord locations are so dramatically, diverse landscape, mountainous areas, and difficult to live. Economic development fjord hinterland mein mushkil ho jata hai. So fjords are not good locations for ports. Excellent. Let's move on. The question number 6 is done. Let's move on towards question number 7 now. Question number 7, I think I will request Satyam to talk about it, because Satyam is from Bihar, somewhere not far away from the location called Bhojpur region. So location in Bihar. So Satyam, why is southwest monsoon called Purvaiya? Okay, I mean northern Indian, north of Vindhyas, they know Purvaiya. Maybe southern India will have an issue there. Anyways, and how has this directional seasonal wind system influenced the cultural ethos of the region? First, a comment on the question, how tricky it is or not. It is not. And what can the answer be? Satyam, please take off.
Sir, the first part of the region question is fairly straight, because even if people do not know exactly where the Bhojpur region is, they do have a fair idea that, Bhojpuri songs have at least established that it's somewhere in Bihar and UP, right? I am glad partly because of this question, because many a times I have seen that, there is this bias called external, something like outside homogeneity bias, which means that, we consider all the people away from us as homogeneous. We see the diversity within our in-grouping, but we see others as quite homogeneous entities. So there is often, because of particularly popularity of Bhojpuri media outside, there is obviously this many times, this stereotypical belief that the whole Bihar is like Bhojpuri. But I'll just give you one small glance that, Western Bihar is Bhojpuri. Then you have Angika, which is like the closest part of Bengal. Eastern Bihar is Angika. We have Maithili, which is northeast Bihar. We have Maghi region, which is around Patna, where Magadh was. We have Bajjika in between Maithili and Bhojpuri. So there is fair diversity, and from one of these diverse parts, one Bhojpuri has been picked for the question. Now, Bhojpuri is, Western Bihar and part of Eastern UP. That's what Bhojpur is. So the southwest monsoon actually is southwest when it starts, when it approaches, it turns around, at the bottom of the country, and it enters the eastern part of the country from eastward direction. That's why it's easterly wind in that region. Ultimately monsoons are orographic rains, so Himalayas help in rainfall in the region, and they move from the eastern direction. That's why they are called Purabia or Purabia. The wind that comes from west is called Pachiya commonly, which is Paschim se Pachiya. So it's coming from west. So generally we see that, Purabia is a celebrated wind. It's the wind that brings rain. So there is particular importance assigned to the whole month of Sawan, Shravan that we call in Hindi, it's Sawan. So we see Sawan month assigned special value. There are whole lots of celebration. Tej, Jitiya comes just after. Then there is special value assigned to this month in terms of Lord Shiva and Parvati, which are celebrated. The impact is so much so that when marriages take place in Bhojpur region, they often paint the walls of the new bride and groom with, images of Shiva and Parvati. This symbolizes the importance of that particularly month, Then we have the agriculture pattern itself is a lot dependent upon, the reversal of the wind, I would say, because you can clearly see that mostly we have chana, which is gram, or wheat, which is grown in, winters when it is a western wind, Pachiya, but when it's eastern wind, Purabia. So recognition of when to start sowing is dependent upon whether the Purabia has started flowing, right? So then it is time for maize or rice in the region, sowing of maize or rice. And in between, there is also horticulture adjusted. However, when there are also issues of floods, right? It's a region that has a lot of floods, not just this region, but in fact, a large part of Bihar, right? So there are certain parts of land which are low-lying. They are covered, they are flooded every year once. So in those places, you will have just one crop. So this is a kind of, the diversity that you see in the cropping pattern, which again impacts. I particularly talked about gram because one point that should be noted is that Bihar is one of the biggest producers of pulses in India, which many people do not. So when people mockingly or seriously talk about sattu in Bihar, sattu is nothing but gram, right?
Yes.
So it's so common because gram is produced so much, right? So that is also a part of it.
So Satyam, is gram is the consequence of the rainfall pattern there?
Part of it, yes, sir, because there is ample rainfall.
Okay. So if before we move on, I'm quickly summarizing it for benefit of all the viewers here. So Purabia is east. The wind coming from east is the Purabia. Essentially, the southwest monsoon wind, the Bay of Bengal branch from the east. That's understood. Sir. So we have one person here asking, Vaishnavi is asking, we do not know the location and only recognize somewhere in eastern India. How to address the question? Okay, Vaishnavi, you cannot answer it. You try whatever you can. Okay. And somebody else tells me he does not know where is Bhojpur. So Harish, okay, if you do not know where is Bhojpur, you say surrender, do some other question.
Sir,
no point mechanically. Yeah.
I'm guessing, sir, at least they would have some idea that it's, in Bihar, UP, something of that sort. I should expect, aspirants should have at least this much idea that it lies in that region. On so that basis,
if you do not know much, then my suggestion is write whatever you can, but know that it not fit you good marks. But if you have no idea, then leave it. I mean, I don't see any reason to write something. Okay, so that's one. Second is summarizing what Satyam said quickly. This part of the culture in terms of Sawan month and the festivals, it has decided the cropping patterns, what type of crops like gram, single crop, that's part of culture. Okay, the Purvaya winds has impacted floods, the floods and impact on the land use patterns, the type of constructions done. It's part of the cultural ethos, the songs. Okay, we have those literature, lot of romanticization around Sawan month. Okay, that's a part of culture. Just summarizing. Okay, culture, agriculture, construction, land use patterns. So that's how you have to link this question. Yeah, continue, Satyam. I just thought of summarizing it. Please go on.
No, sir, that's pretty much it. The other part that if somebody, so there are some things that I know, but most of the people from other regions will probably not know. People from Bihar will know that, in many of the parts of these regions where flooding is quite common, you can see that houses generally have 2 floors. They definitely have first floor. Not everybody can afford first floor, but still you will see many of them have temporary construction, which is, I would say, quasi temporary construction. So there you will see some iron pillars made, on which quickly shelter can be done, because many times flood comes. So you have to quickly move to the, the shelter on the first floor. So these are also some cultural adjustments that people make.
Excellent.
Right? Similarly, if you look at villages, the low-lying areas are the areas for agriculture because floods will come. The higher lying areas are areas for residences. But then there are also some poor people who are so poor that don't own land. They live in the areas where agricultural fields are there. They are employed there on those fields. But when monsoon season comes, when the whole area is going to be inundated, this is a very small distance migration, but they have to migrate to somewhere. So we often see in the news that, on the roadside, there are jugis created. They are actually not mostly permanent structure. Many times they are created just during this season because they have to move away from those agricultural fields. So these are all small parts of culture that impact the overall region.
Fine. So one question to all of you. Do you think that this necessitates a fairly decent idea about the cultural diversity of the country in general? ऐसा होगा कि किसी और दिन we'll ask some cultural region of Karnataka, some parts of Kerala, they can ask something from the Tamil Nadu. Do students need to study on that level, or one of the aberrations we just let it go? What's your thinking?
Sir, it's obviously difficult to know every small region of the country. What I would rather expect is doing 2-3 things at least. One, knowing where different regions are. Some of the students said we do not know where Bhojpur is or the Bhojpur region is, which I think they should have known. That's all, right? So if tomorrow, even if the Andhra Pradesh and Telangana were not divided, and if somebody asked where Telangana is and I don't know where Telangana is, that's not much justified, right? So there are some of the, like, if somebody says where Awadh is, right? Similarly, you need to know some broader regions of the states at least. Second thing is knowing some broad characteristics. So you compare South Karnataka and North Karnataka. North Karnataka is very less developed. South Karnataka is highly developed. You should have at least these ideas, which of these are dry regions, which part is dry. So, Bangalore is on plateau, so the weather is nicer. But you come towards North Karnataka, it is more drier. That is part of the region where it's poor. So at least this much understanding we can expect from students. So based on these understandings, some
we
parts
should have.
Can be answered.
So Vidarbha, Marathwada, Saurashtra.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Wayanad region. Okay, Rayalaseema region, Shekhawati, Mewat region. In news, mein rehta hai, Bundelkhand region.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir, exactly.
So that should be the approach rather than memorizing the Kumaon region, what is the Garhwal region, so parts of Ladakh. I get you. So not a blind study of every region, but major regions you should know. Where is Malwa region? You can't afford not to know that. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Satyam. Lovely insights. I hope all our viewers are enjoying the conversation, not simply study. Har baar padhne ki zarurat nahi hai. Sometimes enjoy the conversation. Let it be enlightening. Do write up quickly whatever you feel. By the way, for the benefit of all our viewers, on 21st of September, we have a scholarship test. I'm sorry, I do not have that slide with me right now because of some power issues at my system. 21st of September, we have a scholarship test based on which we will be giving you scholarships on our advanced courses. So if you're interested, please visit our website. We'll put the link on the YouTube also. You can scan the QR code and feel free to be part, at least know. Plus, yesterday we had an essay session, and based on that, we're also offering you a discounted price of essay booklet. So if you're interested, you can always scan the QR code. We'll put up the codes on the chat of YouTube. Okay, we welcome you all to be part of that. Fine. The next question we'll take up is question number 8. Do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Uttam, can I request you, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, sir,
Yeah.
there is a beautiful insight in this question. So, in the pressure, mostly aspirants would write that marriage and losing its value in modern India. They would not focus on marriage as a sacrament is losing its value. So there is a catch here, right? Marriage as a sacrament is losing value, not marriage losing its value in modern India. For example, post LPGs, there are new economic models, new form of relationships. For example, court-based marriages, right? So it is a form of marriage also, but the marriage as a sacrament is lost here.
So you were talking about the word sacrament is an important word. Sacrament means something is sacred, something is revered, something is traditional about it.
Yes, sir.
Something much respected. So it is not about simply marriage losing its relevance. It's about marriage as a sacred institution is losing. So maybe we are married, but we are not feeling as responsible about marriage as a tradition than what it was earlier. Is that what you're saying, Uttam?
Yes, sir. So there are many examples for this. Many examples for this. For example, there are live-in relationships. There is sologamy now, right? There is single-parent relationship, right? So these are all form of losing marriage as a sacrament, right? Marriage as a sacrament value is losing its value. Now the question arises why it is happening, right? Because of the urbanization, it is fueling individualism. There has been increasing job opportunities. There are no work-life balance, right? There is a high career aspirations for basically male and female. So there is no family time. Also, there is a rise of gig economy also fueling that. Then there is a rise in technology. Right? So rise in social apps like Tinder, Bumble have basically diluted this form, marriage as a sacrament. Then on the other side, there is also a decline in traditional institutions of basically which control the marriages. For example, Khap Panchayats. There is a decline in influence.
Yeah, I think broadly you have captured. We have more points, and I think Uttam. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Last point I would like to add, sir, the rise of education, basically, because education develops scientific temper, right? And it provides our awareness and equality. So there is more intercaste and more inter-community marriages happening. So it has led to basically
education, awareness, economic opportunities.
Yes, sir.
The consequences that young women, young men see marriage as a type of a bondage that can limit their aspirational goals. Marriage probably is an inhibition. Why? Because it can lead to trapping women in domestic chores and childhood care. So aspirational women, aspirational young masses, a decline of traditional social institutions like Khap Panchayat, maybe changing economic aspects, the gig economy, the work from home culture. Okay, we have problems related to the work time because of the those BPO culture that we had. Okay. And social media, I think, is a lot of virtual socialization happening where people don't feel the need of getting into a proper relationship.
Initially,
and I think somewhere, yeah, please.
If we consider like initially जब शादी होती तो it was a two family marriage. Now we are moving toward a nuclear family, and the only two young ones want to marry instead of the complete family. Means there is a change of the complete institution now. The second
Yes.
institution now transforming to the single
In fact,
institution.
there was an article on this, how marriage is no longer about families, it's individuals,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
written by Dipankar Gupta. Okay, Dipankar Gupta, a renowned sociologist, he wrote one article in the Times of India. It was a beautiful article, how marriage earlier was about families, progeny, reproduction, society. Marriage was an excuse for families to grow. Okay. Now it is individual thing, as a personal choice. It's no longer about families coming together, but two people coming together for whatever reasons they might want to come together. It's
Yes,
excellent.
sir.
In fact, we have a very nice point here. Tana Rema says, I didn't notice that. He says, it's a spelling mistake. Sacrament is losing. Dhila, L-O-O-S-I is losing. It should have been L-O. Kho gaya. Okay. Okay, Rema, that's a good one. Yeah, UPSC also can make errors. That's a glaring one for that matter.
Sir, conclusion में हम
So
add
are we
कर
done with
सकते हैं
this? Yes, please. Yes.
Sir, conclusion में हम यही add कर सकते हैं what you have been discussing. See, India is basically moving from families getting married to individuals getting married. Right? It is more based on consent and love, that coercion and status. तो वो क्या है,
Yes.
बहुत अच्छा conclusion होगा.
In fact, very nicely said. Karan says, today marriage is more about companionship. Earlier it was a dharma to be fulfilled. Okay. Yes, excellent. It was a dharma, it was a karma to happen. And now it is more about companionship. It is no longer about lineage. Yes, Sagar, you're right. And maybe you can have one sentence on pandemic also, right? How did pandemic
Yes,
impact marriage as institution
Change.
with the work from पहले कम से कम वो सुकून तो था that my spouse will go out to work, and we will not see each other for at least 12, 13, 14 hours.
Like
Pandemic to tolerate
was
the
a
same face 24 hours was crazy.
there was a report during the pandemic, there's an increase in the divorce in India. There's a report of the NCRB कि divorce increase हुआ due to the presence of both in the house.
Right.
Sir, इस answer में counterpoint भी देंगे हम, right? Because of the opinion. Still, India has lowest divorce rate in the world, around 1%.
See,
We need to add also that point.
Is it because Indian family husband wives are happy, or is it because they're not given a chance to move out? How do you read this?
So maybe a mix of that.
Mix of that, you have gone political.
It's like a marriage institutional
Uttam.
pressure, na sir. Like your marriage जो institution हम consider करते हैं उसी का pressure है. That's why they are not going to be separate, na. And
The less
society
divorce in India. Is it a marriage? Is it an issue of celebration, or is it an issue of concern? Okay, that's my
Sir,
question now.
Okay. Sir, ऐसा portray होता है कि 7 जन्मों का साथ है, right?
सात जन्म खेलना है, my God. Okay, fine.
It becomes an issue then.
Anyways, so all of you young boys and girls, don't get discouraged by what I say. Okay, I'm always biased because of my experiences. You must experience it. Okay, you might have more respect for many other people in life. So anyway, let's continue. Yeah, thanks so much, Uttam. Wonderful. Question number 9. The question is, explain why suicide among women is increasing in a society. And very specific, suicide in women, okay, and that too young women. And it's increasing. There's no debate about, we are all happy types. Yeah, Devender, if you would want to take a go at this.
Yes, sir. When I'm searching about this question, there is a shocking data. Like in India, there is a 36% of the global suicide rate. Means this is the highest in the world, we can say. 36% out of the 100 suicide in the world, the 36 women are suiciding in India. And the range is 15 to 29 years is the maximum. As we consider the latest incident in the Kota, the girl suicide, even some of the part of the Kerala, the suicide rate is very high. And in India, if we are considering the state-wise, the Tamil Nadu has the highest suicide rate. And then the MP is the second one, and the third rank is given to the Maharashtra specifically, due to the increase in the suicide rate in these states. Just as we are moving toward the social media, we are moving toward the Instagram generation, the Facebook generation, and the new social media. We are portraying ourselves like an independent person, and we are having everything. Financially, we are strong, even through the color of our face, even through the dressing sense, we are portraying ourselves like a very good individuals. This is like a societal pressure we can create. अगर इसको हम डिवाइड करना चाहें like the multiple phenomenon में, तो we can divide this into the regional phenomenon, urban phenomena, phenomenal specifically to southern India and then specifically to the northern India. तो इसको हम 4 different area में divide कर सकते हैं according to the level of the education, according to the level of the society, according to the level of the people who are using the social media. उसके according we can divide this question to the various part. तो अगर इसमें हम देखें तो aspirational issue जो everybody has the aspiration now. If I can ask to a guy who in the 10th class, what is your aspiration? He will tell me about his aspiration. I want to buy a Audi. I want to buy a Mercedes. These aspirations lead to the frustration. I want to go into the IIT. I want to clear the AIMS entrance test. And these aspirations lead to frustration and finally lead to the suicide. And in the case, we can say the exploitation issue in the present time, like dark web condition. Like there's
I'll just emphasize one point. Okay, maybe our viewers are noticing. Okay, but just to emphasize, it's very important to appreciate that this question is not about suicide in general. Okay, suicide in young women is a very important word.
Specifically.
Okay, so all of you be aware of this. When we say aspiration, we'll not talk about aspiration in general for all young people. We say how aspirations for women has increased, maybe because of liberalization, economic openness, maybe education advancement. There is more, acceptance of women as career women. So when we say women's suicide, we'll also talk about how even with more exposure to social media, women are very vulnerable. Vulnerable to the dark web, vulnerable to pressure to project themselves as happy, pressure to project themselves as traditional yet aspirational. So emotional issues, mental health issues, depression issues probably are more severe for women, given that women do not have that type of social system that gives them support when they are trying to be aspirational. Okay, yeah, Devendra, I just want to emphasize your point. That women nahi chhode. Otherwise, general ऐसे चला जाएगा towards suicide in India.
Yes, specifically the question is about the woman. Like there was an example of Zia Khan, recently suicide by Zia Khan. That was the case of the exploitation of the woman. And due to the deep fake new technology introduced, that's also lead to the exploitation of the woman because women are more vulnerable to that technology due to the pornographic conditions and some of the other conditions we can say. There is another thing, the marriage institution, the issue of the dowry. There was an example in the Kerala, the woman's suicide due to his gold was sold by his husband. So he suicided. And there's a bankruptcy issue that's related to the suicide of the woman, increase in the suicide rates. And now the condition like the love affairs, the marriage, educated.
Devendra, Pratima online, Pratima Sharma is asking us,
yes,
is there a climate change angle also, sir? Because with feminization, a very smart one, I think. I missed this point, Pratima. So did all of us here. Very right. Climate change, rural poverty, out-migration by the menfolk, problems of water, problems of poverty, problems of rural issues there. Absolutely. I think you have a point there. So I don't have a case study there. Satyam, if you recall, we were doing some data analysis on this. You have that data with you. Very interesting data that we came across. If you can read out or remember something to share.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So first thing that was noticed was that when we look at the data of female suicides in India, more than 50% are housewives.
Wow.
So the answer is probably more in that institution called marriage, which we were discussing a few minutes ago. Right. Then again, when we look further, what is the second highest? The second highest number belongs to students, though by a big margin, but second highest is students, which is again the burden of expectations, in this world where they are given. So I would rather say it's a double-edged sword for women compared to men. Men also have the burden of expectation. We have recently seen the suicides happening in Kota. Many of those were boys. There were 1 or 2 girls, but that number, that asymmetry is simply because we have seen even in these UPSC institutes, right? I have attended classes. Everybody here has attended classes. You have taken classes, sir, and you can clearly see the asymmetry in numbers where guys are literally almost like 80
Absolutely.
to 85% of the classroom, right? Girls are just 15 to 20%. So we look at that, gap. So the number of girls had to be less in total number of suicides because of this pressure. But they have double-edged swords, because part of the pressure is for performance, which is also on boys taken, but part pressure is also of performing quickly, because otherwise you are married. Succeed now or you will be married, right? So they have very small time duration. The third highest number belongs to daily wagers. Daily wagers, the discussion that was pointed out a bit earlier of even climate change, it's the daily wagers that suffer most because of these things, right? So we have this part. Now, when we look at this 15 to 29 wala range, the maximum, when we look at the death data, right? People die because of various reasons. Among women in 15 to 29 age group, suicide is the biggest reason of deaths. Right.
So if I summarize, Satyam, one is housewives are the highest, in suicide. Number two, we talked about suicides related to career aspirations, where the asymmetry. Despite that, I think there's a amount of girls under pressure. That's one. A third, not to miss, is the fact that many of these are as young as 15 to 20 years of age. Okay, maybe because of dowry issues, but that's a concern. So all our listeners, a very important thing is, in these kind of topics, don't merely list down what are the reasons. Reasons we all can write down. The challenge is, how do you discuss these points? And very nice if you can have some data around it.
Yeah.
Very nice if you can support it in terms of some patterns, maybe. That's more important, not the fact that dowry and mental health. The discussion is what we're trying to have. Yes, Satya, maybe one or two lines more. Yeah, please.
Sir, just two more points. One point is that among particularly, marriage related issues, when, married women are dying, the most important factors were seen. Number one, dowry. Number two, was impotence and infertility. So because of impotence and infertility, women are often, targeted within the households more, right? And one interesting...
The patriarchy thing there. The patriarchy thing in full force responsibly. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Case of dowry also in case
there is one very interesting observation that I saw, that so the highest number was reported in Tamil Nadu among housewives.
Wow. Why is that, do you think?
So this is a contrast, right? We see that southern states are more developed in general, even women have more voice. But we will have to look at the fact that when, women develop, they also have more aspirations. To be allowed to grow those aspirations, right? So there is this always a push and pull. Like the whole Indian society is in a flux. It's continuously churning, where women are trying to break away from all the shackles. Some of them are breaking. They are applying forces to break even more. And then there are always this patriarchal forces.
Backlash is there.
Yes, sir.
So while we are allowing for aspirations, education, the social support systems are not as robust and not as forthcoming in terms of probably enabling these aspirations. So padha liya, but the 2-3 old generations continue to be patriarchal. Okay, that's why maybe I'm surprised to see Tamil Nadu having high suicide rates among young women. Okay, excellent. Good point.
Yes, sir. Chota sa example, padha liya, job kar rahe ho, par shaadi ke baad nahi karna. That kind of issues still exist in India.
Marriage pressure continues to be an issue across India.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think in marriage, the biggest compromise is always by women. And that's depressing. You are studied, you are probably more qualified, you are as aspirational, you probably are more skilled. and then you are back home doing the same chores, okay, in the name of balancing your work and family life. I guess depressing. So I think it's a very good question. UPSC is very smart at picking up relevant questions, not the mechanical ones that we always talk about. Yeah, thank you, Uttam. Thank you, Devinder. Devinder, I cut you short there. I just thought
Yes,
I'll have some discussion. Okay, excellent. Lovely. Let's move on quickly now. We are running short of time. We had planned the session for 1.5 hours. Maybe we'll take up 2-3 more important questions. Okay, and then we can probably ignore the rest for now. Which question I'll ask the team to vote on? What do you think, Devinder, Uttam, Satyam? Which question should we discuss? 10, 11, 12, 13? What would you like to discuss?
Question number 14, sir, you can discuss.
14. Do we not want to discuss question number 12? A quick input on question 12. The technology changes during the Sultanate times. How they influence Indian society. It's a tricky question. To be very honest, I think it requires some deep study, not making that down. But at a very high level, Sultanate times, we had introduction of irrigation in a much bigger scale. Okay, northern plains mein. Sultanate times, we also had road constructions, sarais, the Grand Trunk Road, Sirsa Suri came a bit later, but somewhere the tradition was built. Urban and city planning was a part of the Sultanate design, most of them from Afghanistan, Afghans, Persians coming in with the Mughals. Okay. And I think one important technology was also gunpowder. Although Babur used it very, very effectively, but the Mongols and the early rulers had brought in. And how it impacts society, partly was in terms of economic growth, partly was in terms of irrigation and the need to control prices. I remember Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq managing prices, managing scarcity, managing all that because of irrigation. They had brilliant systems to control droughts, I believe. Even Firoz Shah Tughlaq is a pioneer in construction of canals. Okay, so I can think on these lines.
Yes, sir. There was also introduction of Arghat, that water wheels, which
water wheels, the Persian water wheels.
Yes, there were 3-4 things. Yes, sir. Persian water wheels. Then there was also introduction of paper.
Yes, absolutely.
Tankha was introduced during that era.
Become the basis of accounting and trade at that time. The paper introduction.
Excellent. So that impacted society.
We study about Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was the first person who actually experimented with fiat currency. Fiat currency that we have.
Yes.
State authorities, what actually gives it a value. It was also a paper-based currency. Though it did not succeed, then it was simply not possible to have a fiat currency at that point of time because people just duplicated it. But that's when this paper could make it possible to have at least experimented with that.
I agree. Fine, we'll move on quickly. Next question. Tribal. Question number 13 is on tribal issues. I think it's a straight question.
Yes,
Munda rebellion, Santhal rebellion, Rampa rebellion. ये ना हो पाया तो बेटा तुमसे ना हो पाएगा. That's straight then. Okay, question number 13 should have gone all out.
Just one small input on question number 13, sir. I think it is important to address both the aspects. First, when the tribals, directly, outrightly revolted against British, and eventually when they became part of the, overarching Gandhian movement. It's important to address both. Other than that, I think it's fairly simple question, and all the people know all the facts. Even during prelims, we memorize all this. Fine, we move on. Question number 14. Resource potential of long coastline of India and status of national hazard preparedness. This also is not a very tough question. It's L2 according to me, or even L1 to some extent. Now the trick here is, see, whenever they ask about a resource or a problem or a potential or development of a large area, it's always smart to break up into small parts. So if I was at his answer, I would talk about resource potential of Bengal Odisha region, resource potential of maybe Andhra and Tamil Nadu region, of Konkan coast, of Canada coast, of Gujarat coast. If we can do it,
it gives a sense of better understanding. So coastal areas में तीन ही potential है largely. One big potential is the biotic potential. We should not forget it. The mangrove forests, the estuaries, the coral reef systems. These are very, very rich areas of high productivity. There's an ecological significance and very high for the entire coast. We have the Vembanad lagoons, the backwaters. We have the Bhitarkanika forests of Odisha. We have the mangroves of Gujarat for that matter, with this many small inlets and indented coastline. So that's one, the forest ecological aspect. Linked to this is the fishery resources, the fisheries that we have, marine fisheries. And unfortunately, this is not well developed. Much of the focus of India has been in inland fisheries, freshwater fisheries, the blue revolution, the Matsya Sampada. Even that's largely about the inland fisheries. Marine fisheries is not well developed. We do not have deep water fishing along the coast. So within 50 meters is what we have. So great potential, not well used. The next very important resource of the coasts, okay, is the resource in terms of economic prospects, where we have sheltered waters, we have got broad shelves, we can have ports, we can have the location of harbors. Okay. But of course, you can always talk about the problems of siltation in eastern India vis-a-vis the deeper ports possible on the western coasts of India. So economic potential ports. This is a link करके coastal shipping can be very important aspect of economic prospects. Although not resources in the conventional region, but coastal shipping. Unfortunately, again, another component not developed at all. India almost has non-existent shipping, except for some parts of Gulf of Cambay, where we have done some ferry services, hovercraft services. We have a roll out Ro-Ro services between parts of your Bharuch and Bhavnagar. Some Mumbai regions have developed hovercraft services. Other coastal navigation has not been developed. The next big resource, you know about rare earth minerals. Good part of Eastern India has rare earths. Parts of your question, prelims bhi tha last time. Okay, the coasts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Odisha coast. And that's a very important element. Rare earths, monazite sands, beryllium deposits, titanium resources there from this one. So that's one. Again, not well developed because we have not done proper geological mapping of the resources. And then important resource along the coast, of course, tourism. Beach tourism, coral tourism, dive tourism. Developed, but again, much left for prospects also. Except for Goa coast, parts of Kerala coast, bulk of the coast, again, not well developed in terms of tourism. But yes, there are issues related to ecology. So, yahi 4-5 potential hai. In terms of how we have managed the hazard preparedness. So 3 hazards, the coasts are vulnerable to. One hazard is cyclone. We have done an extraordinary work. Yes, all dear listeners, we have this screenshot on our screen for a scholarship test. You can scan it. Okay, so come back to our question discussion. So we have this cyclone management is fairly good. Evacuation, early warning systems, part of tropical cyclone management system that we have. So we have done good work there. The other 2 hazards, one is tsunami. Tsunami is part of our Indian Ocean tsunami networks. We have certain centers for tsunami forecasting, particularly in eastern India, in parts of Andhra and along Tamil Nadu. And what we have done is largely based on mangrove-based afforestation on the coast. So that we have done. We have a program scheme called MISTI. It's a kind of a global scheme where we want to revive the mangrove forests. That is our preparedness there, apart from some seismic. But one of the areas we have not done much right now is the hazards related to sea level rise. Bulk of the coast of India is vulnerable to submergence because of sea level rise. In fact, the reports where Mumbai is vulnerable for submergence by as early as 2050 itself. Half of Mumbai will be submerged. So for that, we have got nothing in place, nothing around, building those walls against sea level rise. nothing about evacuation or developing alternate. So it's a mixed thing. While we're good in cyclone forecasting, evacuation management, we're okay with tsunami. We do not know until we face the problem, but hopefully we are doing well. And nothing much about sea level rise. A fourth you may add is the hazard related to pollution and ecological issues. There we have a coastal zonation regulation, CRZ we have divided into 4 zones, like zone 1, 2, but it is largely diluted today because of permitting construction, tourism, permitting the intertidal zones are allowed for ecotourism, beach tourism. So it's compromised. So that's the input for this question number 15. Now question number 14. Let's move on, unless we have some other point. I hope listeners online are patient with the process. I know it's taken some time, but you can always add on to this. That's about question number 14. 15, identify and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of vegetation in India. So there are 4 factors of diversity of vegetation. One is rains. Don't forget, rains are a very important part of diversity. The second important reason for diversity is topography, the elevations, the mountain, the slopes, the Himalayan forest and the rest. Third very important diversity reason is the type of local ecosystem, the mangrove ecosystem, the swamp ecosystem, the salt ecosystems along the coast. That also creates diversity. And the fourth is overall temperature distribution of India. The hot regions, the cold regions, the coniferous, the savanna type of landscape. So temperature, rainfall, elevation, and local conditions, they have created the type of vegetation we have. So thorn forests, monsoon forests, deciduous forests, evergreen forests. We have got the dry semi-evergreen forests, mangrove forests. These are the factors influencing. The more tricky part is the second part of the question. Assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in India and rainforest of India. So now this is interesting. It's asking significance of the wildlife sanctuaries, and that too very specifically in the rainforest regions of India. So online, our viewers and listeners, can you tell me in India, where do we have the rainforests? Can you tell me? Anybody? Kaveri, Dheeraj, Pratima, Karan, Divek, Tana, Mangesh, any one of you, Shweta, Kaul, Akshay, where in India do we have rainforests? Is asking about wildlife sanctuaries and their significance in the rainforests. Let's see, anybody? Yes, Kaveri, very well summed up. The Western Ghats, Northeast and Andaman regions. Okay, fine. Anybody else? Where do we have rainforests in India? Rainforest is a very specific term. Karan says Andaman Nicobar Islands. Western slope, Western Ghats. Okay, I take over from here. Not entire Western Ghats, guys. The rainforests are largely along south of Bembanad. Okay, the coasts of Konkan regions, they have, the coasts of Malabar regions, they have rainforests. Not entire Western Ghats. South of Bembanad, south of Nilgiris, the Malabar coast, that's one. Second, of course, is not entire Andaman Nicobar, say Nicobar. So Nicobar and the Malabar. So one very important point, you must know what are the wildlife sanctuaries here. Don't give me a generic list of what are the wildlife sanctuaries elsewhere. So any one of you from the panel, either Devender, Uttam or Satyam, can you tell me what are the wildlife sanctuaries in these parts of India? Maybe 3-4 names if you can.
In the Kerala part, like a Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary, specifically for the conservation of the lion-tailed macaw and some of the protection from the animal and the human conflict, specifically for the elephant, like the elephant and the human conflict.
What are the wildlife sanctuaries? The names are, I think, Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary.
Yes.
Eraviculam National Park, Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay. Anything else we know? Along the Kerala coast,
Uttam, you're on mute.
Yes, sir. I was talking about Periyar, Wayanad, Parambakulam Wildlife Sanctuaries.
Parambakulam, yes.
Yes, sir.
And we have this Hornbill Wildlife Sanctuary also, again
Yes,
part
sir.
of Malabar. And then in the Nicobar Islands, the whole Nicobar is a biosphere reserve. Okay, biosphere reserve, and the local national parks like Galathea Bay, Narcondam Sanctuary. Okay, so students must know some region specific. Okay, that's one. The next question is: can anybody? No, Shaheen. Nilgiri Shola is not a part of rainforest. The question is rainforest.
No, sure.
Rainforest, okay, and that too wildlife sanctuary, not biosphere reserves. And then that's where the trick in this question lies. Okay, now my question is, can anybody online tell us what is the purpose of wildlife sanctuary? What is the significance of wildlife sanctuary? Why do we have wildlife sanctuaries? Do we have something in mind? Let's see. What is the objective with which the wildlife sanctuaries were demarcated and established? Vivek, Shaheen, Karan, Prasanna. Okay, nobody? Okay, कुछ तो भाग भी गए. Wildlife sanctuary देखकर decided to go wild and escape from the channel. That's fine. Anybody else? Protection of endangered species. That's obvious first point. Great, Sagar. आगे बताओ. आगे बताओ. Flora and fauna. Wildlife sanctuary. Flora and fauna. Okay, Akshay. आपने गोली दिया but not bad. ठीक है. We will not reject it. Okay. Species specific. Preserve species. Conservation. Tana, conservation of what? Conservation of human beings. Conservation of coal resources. Conservation of water resources. Biodiversity. Excellent. I'm very happy. Dheeraj, you have got it. Correct. So guys, one is wildlife sanctuaries are species specific primarily for preservation of animals. You might add flora because dikhne mein complete lagta hai. Okay. Primarily for animal species and the rest. That's one. And to conserve the animals, a very important objective is to manage man-animal conflict. Man-animal conflict management, not to take care of human beings, but take care of animals. And the third very important is they are for awareness, for sensitization of local communities, okay, so that they will not harm and there will not be adverse impact on the wildlife there. Ye teen official reasons hain why do we have wildlife sanctuaries. So the significance of sanctuaries are this. You can always add elephant sanctuary. You can always add something about tiger sanctuaries. You can always add something on the hornbill sanctuaries. You can add something on, of course, rainforest nahi hai, but Dugong Sanctuary National Park, we have Gulf of Mannar. Okay, that's the main idea. Assessing, I think 3 points here. The wildlife sanctuaries have not been very successful. Okay, why? Because they are more malleable to alterations. The control is not as strict. It is not as well managed like national parks, where there is a stake of the center and biosphere reserves. The assessment is not as effective. The conflicts have not been majorly averted. In fact, conflicts have increased because a lot of wildlife sanctuaries have been demarcated on local land where people have got displaced. That's why they need to have a conservation forest around them or an ecological sensitive area around them. Okay. And third, of course, is that these wildlife sanctuaries, okay, are not effective also because some of these are resource regions. Okay, in terms of timber, in terms of coal resources. Of course, rainforest mein nahi hai, but very important source of timber, firewood. Okay, the conflict is there, not much of impact. And now we know that development of coastal areas, coastal tourism, coastal navigation, the focus of development of Nicobar project, that will impact a lot of wildlife sanctuary national parks. So overall, good idea, not as successful. The reason why many of these sanctuaries were ultimately upgraded into national parks, which are more restrictive, and into protected forests, reserve forests, and biosphere reserves. Okay, then we are done with this question number 15. Okay, we are done with this. Let's move on. I think we have time to take up only 1 or 2 more questions. So let the team decide what would you like to take up and who will discuss this between 3 of you, Devinder, Uttam, and Satyam. We can take a maximum 2 questions. So please decide and let's take on.
There is a question number 19 that we are discussing in the morning. So Satyam can take the question number 19.
Okay, so question number 19 is again one of the difficult questions as per at least our understanding. It is not difficult per se. We all understand broadly how caste is both fluid as well as static. But there are 2 things that make it a bit challenging. First, it is a 15 marks question. So we are expected to write more, right? And the second thing is that organization of the answer. How do you go about organizing the answer? So say, we discussed in the first section that, the caste identity has become more fluid in India. Then we go on discussing how caste identity is still static in India. But what will eventually happen is that we will end up actually repeating a lot of the points from the first section to the second. So there is the better organization of the question would be how different aspects or how different features or how different events are affecting both the fluidity and the caste being static in India, right? So there are many examples to this, right? We have seen economic liberalization. How does economic liberalization impact us? Economic liberalization has just opened up opportunity for everybody. For as far as market is concerned, market does not discriminate. For market, everybody is equal. But are there no systematic issues? Are there no systemic issues? There still are. Imagine a certain, say scheduled caste in a particular region, which is actually already very poor. So, money begets money. They don't have the opportunity to be quote unquote entrepreneurial, right? Connections still matter. Why do we see a certain sections of the society and certain regions being more entrepreneurial and business oriented? Why do we see others becoming, more of a laborers? It's not just, the talent. It's also connection. It's also the opportunity that you actually get, right? Similarly, we see a constitutional provision of reservation, right? So I'll give you 2 contrasting places of reservation. One is in an educational institute, right? So government educational institutes do have reservation, and we have people from all the castes coming into the institution, and you see, because of this, there is this intermingling that is enabled, right? Which would have been lesser, if not, almost nil, had this not been done. At the same time, the same reservation also creates this sense of competition among, people of quote unquote upper caste. Now, there is one important thing that I just said, quote unquote upper caste. If you note NCERT, even in NCERT, whenever the word upper or lower caste is used, it is put in quotes, because we must understand that there is nothing called upper caste or lower caste. It is a hierarchy that was created in ancient India, which should be, removed and jettisoned, which sadly continues in social terms, but we as educated parts of the country must appreciate that this should not happen. And hence the quote is used that this is not something which is actually true. As in, there is no caste which is actually upper caste, but that is how it is written. So putting it in quotes, right? Something I wanted to mention. Then again, you see the political arena. In political arena, we have seen, because of Green Revolution, how OBCs, gained some ground, and eventually we have Mandal Commission report coming in, and they eventually could create I would say pressure groups, right? Political pressure groups. We have things like Bhim Sena. So political identity is all coming up, right? Which are keeping them static. But at the same time, I will give you one simple example. You look at national parties, the biggest of the parties in India, right? Even in regions, you will see some of the parties that always try to broaden their cover in order to include all the castes. They provide a deliberate opportunity to people of different castes at different positions. They will make them, important ministers. They will make them even chief ministers. So this again is showing where, a chief minister of a quote unquote lower caste is sitting on the chair where, the different. So this whole situation has created both fluidity and, also made this system.
So Satyam, if I may ask, for the benefit of all the listeners, what are the three elements of caste is rigid and static? Three elements of caste is fluid. So if I am summarizing, how is caste static today? Number one, caste system has hardened. It has become a part of identity that is now getting more asserted. Caste system is now becoming the basis of political empowerment also. So the identity is hardened. It has more crystallized. People are not shying away from mentioning their castes. And increasingly, you can see this in the caste-based politics. You can see this in the caste-based alignment, okay? Starting probably from Mandal Commission. So that's how it is static, not changing. It is there. Because one of the expectations was economic growth and development, education probably will remove caste. It's not doing that. It is there. That is right, it is rigid and static. Can I say this, Satyam?
Yes, sir, we can say this. In fact, even in the economic part, we have FICCI, we also have DICCI.
Yes, absolutely.
D stands for Dalit, right?
Yes. The Dalit identity is strong. OBC identity is strong. The Gujjar identity is strong. The demand for reservation for Marathas as a community is very strong. Of course, that's ethnic, but also there's a caste angle to that also. So yes, so that's one. The caste identities are hardened. Okay, so now we've got it. The second part is, what tells us it is fluid? What are three elements in which it is fluid? I can think of a strong, please.
I would like to add one more point. The role of social media, right? So role of WhatsApp and other social media, वो harden करते हैं through caste-based groups, right? In this way, it is static.
Echo chambers, there are literally echo chambers.
Echo chambers, yes.
WhatsApp groups in which people belonging to just one caste will be there, right? And they will be echo chambers because everybody would be saying. So how?
Unfortunately, ये caste grouping civil services में भी है. Okay, Lavasana में भी है, services में भी है, promotion issues में है, judiciary में है. हमारे caste का आदमी, हमारे caste का leader, हमारे caste का. Okay, so it's there. Caste-based marriages have become more stronger. Okay, at least it is being flaunted. I mean, the best way to know how strong caste is, you must look at the matrimonial ads. Okay, caste ही चाहिए. Okay, हमें specific Brahman ही चाहिए. It is hardened despite all the education and mobility. So fine, that part is good. And social media has also enabled the hardening. It's like, that X-Men movie में ना, okay, Charles, who can read mind, he puts on that cap and is able to identify all the X-Men across the whole world. So social media वही कर रहा है. Okay, with social media, I'm able to identify all मेरे जात के लोग across world में, और सारे मिलके एक group हो जाओ. Okay, so yes, it's hardened. Now the question is, how is it fluid? Batao. What are the elements it tells us is fluid also?
Sir, fluid ultimately is about two aspects, right?
Go. Yes.
One is about how hierarchy is impacted. Because see, I'll tell you one thing. There are also many religions in India. Have we ever talked about eradication of religions? We have never talked about this.
Absolutely.
Why is it that we talk about eradication of caste system? The root problem is hierarchy and not just the existence of an identity.
Correct. Very nice. Excellent. I love this point.
Right.
So the fluidity, you're saying the fluidity is partly in terms of the hierarchy has now been disrupted.
Yes, sir. So there are, like I was discussing, how Green Revolution actually strengthened OBCs, how they gave them upward mobility, right? So that, see, there's simple comparison of Gandhi and Ambedkar when it comes to caste and social issues. Gandhi was ultimately an upper caste. Ambedkar was a Dalit. Ambedkar knew where it pinches. He had been, pinched throughout his life. So he never talked about, achieving social equality first. His whole idea was political and economic equality. Give me political empowerment, give me economic empowerment. I will automatically take
Excellent.
social empowerment.
Excellent. So the fluidity number one is the hierarchy has been disrupted.
Yes, through political and economic empowerment mostly.
Excellent. That's the reason. Second element of fluidity.
Second element is identity itself. So if we look at even the NCRT, our NCRT mentions that when we see in general, upper caste is forgetting its caste identity in India, while the lower caste is still remembering it. There are two prime reasons behind it. One, lower caste faces whatever prejudices or etc. as part of that caste identity, so they are kind of forced to remember that identity many a times. The second reason is upper caste has reaped all the benefits it could from its caste identity, most of the benefits. So what was the benefit from caste identity to upper caste? It was nothing but quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. We have a caste, we have the caste system. So caste.
But Satyam, I will challenge this idea of NCRT. I don't think I agree that upper caste has given up its caste identity.
It's not given up, sir. It's not given up.
It's not as assertive, you mean?
When you see assertiveness related to caste identity, it will come more from Dalits. Because they are challenging the hierarchy because they are facing the situation.
They're challenging, and the upper caste is trying to maintain status quo.
Yes.
That way.
So the upper caste would say, caste system kahan, everybody is equal, remove reservation, it makes no sense.
So again, come back. So where is the fluidity in this? Where's the fluidity? The fluidity in this is where? So one, I said fluidity is that the hierarchy is challenged.
Yes,
the second fluidity is that assertiveness has become more in Dalits. But that's not fluidity, right?
That is part of challenging the hierarchy itself. The second fluidity is at least a section which is mostly upper caste is in public at least, not ready to recognize that caste identity. It's more like,
it's a disadvantage.
Point out.
Okay, it's a disadvantage if you assert your upper caste identity more.
So that's what NCRT is pointing out, that the upper caste is trying to forget its caste identity because the political
it doesn't need it, maybe.
The benefits out of it is less for them compared to.
I will add one more dimension of fluidity. Okay, the fluidity is in the form of the caste systems today are no longer tied to the occupations. Typically, what was said, this caste can do only this. Your name can be linked to any occupation, but you can be doing some other occupations. There's a kind of economic fluidity, consequence of education, consequence of expansion of economic opportunity, the consequence of probably even more acceptability, that a particular caste need not be tied to the occupation Varna system they talked about. So I can see broadly only those two elements of fluidity. One is fluid in terms of their hierarchy getting disrupted, fluid in terms of the occupation. And third, if I may add, I'm risking it, the fluidity is also in terms of their physical mobility. Okay, caste, if you look in terms of where they owned land and where they lived and what they did was tied to a particular place. They could not move anywhere. Today, we have got more fluidity in terms of accessing resources, in terms of migration for that matter, in terms of land ownership of that matter. So occupation fluidity, resource ownership fluidity, fluidity in terms of, you can say, a location and in terms of the hierarchy challenge. Have I put it convincingly?
Yes, sir. Sir, I would like to add one point.
Tell me.
Like the question is, why is basically caste system in India both fluid and static? So I would like to add the role of state, for example, state and government, for example, railways, right? How it makes it static. It employs manual scavengers, right? So in that form, it is making it static. On the other hand, it talks about eradication of basically
Yes.
untouchability, right? So in that
Okay.
both
The
ways,
paradox
yes, sir,
of
the irony.
irony. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love this discussion. Online guys, I hope you also enjoyed it. Okay. In fact, all of you, हमारे श्रोता, हमारी जनता, हमारे students, okay, हमारे छात्रगण, thank you for joining us. You must be part of all our conversations. I think the best, the most appropriate, the objective, the incisive discussions for the GS paper is available only at edukemy.com and Edukemy YouTube channel. So you should be part of it. Go tell your friends about us. Like करें, subscribe करें, हमें घंटी मारें. Okay, please send in your feedback. Okay, and we would like to be part of your success journey. In some ways, I think we do more justice than all the others who do justice. Anyway, that's my marketing sales pitch. Take it seriously, but with a healthy dose of salt also. Where I don't want to sound to be brash there, but lovely. I loved it. Thanks a lot, Satyam, Uttam, Devender. Okay, and all our dear listeners. I must thank you for being with us consistently. Okay, and I
sir.
hope you learn. UPSC में थोड़ा मजा आना चाहिए. Not mechanical अट्टा नहीं मारो. And I love the UPSC, the way they frame the questions. Okay. Yes, you were telling me something. I missed out.
Sir,
Yeah, please tell me.
So in the end, I would like to add one point. The question number
Yes.
19 को हम rephrase करते हैं basically. So why is
Yeah.
caste identity in a lighter note basically? So why is Edukemy both fluid and static? So we are basically delivering static content also and providing you with the dynamic analysis, right? So we are
The only institute in the entire country which has credible, fluid, and mains ready preparation is the advanced course. You must be part of our system, otherwise you'll regret it all
And
your life.
one more thing.
I
We have
sound like
Sir,
a ZTV or India TV or
Sir, at last
CSE.
we have
एक tagline था ना?
6 direct question from our test series for the mains
हाँ sir,
support program. The 6 direct question in the GS1 from our test series.
that's good.
6 direct questions. Guys, the 6
Sir.
questions were the critical part to get you marks and qualify in the ICE examination. जिन लोगों ने ज्वाइन नहीं किया है उनको अफसोस होगा और हम चाहेंगे कि आपको आगे अफसोस ना हो, इसलिए आप पक्का हमारे साथ में आए.
सर एट लास्ट एक ने टैगलाइन डिजाइन किया था ना, अगर प्रिपरेशन में रह गई कुछ कमी, अगर प्रिपरेशन में रह गई हो कुछ कमी, देन कम टू एडुकेमी.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. I had a blast. Okay, all in good faith, all in good taste. Okay, Karan, don't just tell me, go and tell the whole world. And the team rocks, not just me, but lovely. All of you, you are our ambassadors. You are our mouthpiece. खाली पीली infotainment से खुश ना रहें, हमेशा प्रवचन ना सुने, YouTube में कुछ पढ़ाई भी करें और अच्छे से हमारे साथ में हंसते खेलते पढ़ाई करें. और छोटा मोटा ज्ञान क्यों दीपक पादुकोण के बाल लंबे हो रहे हैं और क्यों बिडेन गिर जा रहे हैं, किंग जोंग क्यों जॉगिंग कर नहीं रहे हैं, ऐसे वीडियोस देखने के लिए बाकी वीडियोस हैं YouTube चैनल से हमारे यहाँ पर. अच्छी पढ़ाई, अच्छे से पढ़ाई और रिलेवेंट पढ़ाई होगी. So join us on Edukemy.
At
By
last,
the way,
we are
we
offering
will-
a 2 crore scholarship. There is a scholarship test on 21st.
कौन दे रहा है यार?
Edukemy.
Edukemy
is
बिकवाओगे
getting a
क्या?
scholarship of 2 crore. So
Totally true course worth है. ऐसे
Yes,
बोले
yes.
डरा दिया, इतने तो पैसे मेरे पास भी नहीं है.
scholarship worth of 2 crores. So there is a test on 21st September from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can attempt it in online mode as well as the offline mode.
Yes, you're all welcome. And reminder, tomorrow we don't have a discussion. We'll follow up the discussion on paper 2, GS3 and 4 also. Okay, I think the GS2 paper will decide either Monday or on Tuesday. We'll announce it for you. Followed by GS3 paper, environment economy and science technology along with security. And 4th paper also we will take up. So my wishes to all of you, happy preparing, be happy, stay happy, laugh. एक दूसरे को छेड़छाड़ भी करें, घुमा फिरा के यूपीएससी लेकिन क्वालिफाई करें. अरे ये तो यार मीम के लायक हो गया उत्तम. You can do that meme now. Okay. So goodbye, all of you. Good night. Have a nice weekend. Okay. And thank you for being with us. Bye-bye. Logging off now.